is conjecture, but I think most of it's fact. See, a film that you may know of called Star Wars came into existence, and it made a lot of money. So when one studio makes a lot of money, the next studio is eaten up with jealousy, and they've got to do something. So 20th Century Fox, I think it was, made Star Wars and made billions of dollars. So the executives at Paramount, who were new, because executives changed more often than you do your underwear. They just, every 4 or 5 years, there's a change in executives. So Star Trek, the series that I was in, had ceased, was canceled, and about 6 years later, Star Wars comes out, and then Paramount calls a meeting of their executives. Now, this next is conjecture, but I see half a dozen men around a table, and there's flop, we call it flop sweat. Like things aren't going well and you break into a cold sweat. These executives are like in a cold sweat. They got this thing called Star Wars. It's making billions of dollars. What have we got? What have we got that can compete? Now, in my mind's eye, there's this young guy serving coffee. What have we got that can compete? And he says, you know, there's this thing called Star Trek. And the executives, who are new, never heard of, what's Star Trek? Oh, that's that series that they had on. There was this wonderful actor called Shatner that was in. So they say, well, okay, Star Trek. And they look into Star Trek and say, okay, we're gonna make a Star Trek. And we'll make it big, we'll get big, we'll get the best. Let's get Robert Wise to direct. Now, Robert Wise was a big director. West Side Story, all kinds of big movies, big. He had his choice of any movie he wanted to direct. So they came to him and said, would you like to do Star Trek? This next part I know is true. He goes home and he says to Millie, his wife, Millie, they want me to direct this thing called Star Wars, Star Trek. And I'm not. She says, are you crazy? My favorite show. Bobby, you've got to direct it. He says, okay, I'll direct it. So Robert Wise becomes a director for the big movie. And he assembles big casts, things big, like Doug Trumbull to do the special effects. Doug Trumbull, it's genius, because back then, now, I just saw Twister, and the special effects in Twister, it's incredible. Back then, we didn't have it. Back then, they had a flashlight. Swear to God, in the front of the spaceship, they had a flashlight, you know? And then they had these buttons fell off of everything, including our pants. It was awful. It was just awful. So they get Doug Trumbull to do the special effects. And then Robert Wise is directing, and what's his name, wrote it and directed, and he went out with my daughter. That's why I can't remember his name. It's true. Anyway, we make the movie, okay? Big movie. It's called The Movie. Star Trek, The Movie. And it comes, Doug Trumbull tried to do too much. So, and there were various things that happened along the way in the production of the movie that delayed its exhibition. So it was going to be on a December, whatever it was, the exhibit was going to be in Washington, D.C., and they had to have the film in that thing that exhibits it that day or before. That day, the film comes in under the arm of some executive, and they put it in the machine, and it's still wet from the immersion, what they put the film in. So they play the film. Robert Wise was the editor on what some people call the greatest film. What's the name of the film? Orson Welles. Citizen Kane. So Citizen Kane, Robert Wise was the editor on Citizen Kane. And an editor is like more important than the actors. The Western, Gary Hyden. You're a wonderful audience. Can you come with me tomorrow and be there? Okay, so High Noon was apparently brought in and finished filming, and they looked at it and said, "This is terrible." And Robert Wise, who didn't edit that film, the editor of that film put in the ticking clock. Here come the bad guys. And they cut back and forth, made the film, made it into an award-winning film. The editor. So the editor is extremely important. Here was Robert Wise, who had edited Citizen Kane. Great editor. No time. The film was so delayed and the exhibition date was so set that he had very little time to edit, especially Doug Trumbull's wonderful special effects. There was nobody guiding Doug Trumbull, so he made a lot of special effects. So it went on. So the film was slow. Could have been better edited, could have been faster. As a result, it made a little money, and then much later on, it made a lot of money. But instead of making the billions that Star Wars made, it made, a couple of million. So the head of Paramount, Charles Bluedorn, God, I remember that name. Charles Bluedorn goes home, and he says to his wife, and I don't know her name, "Wife, we made this film. It was supposed to make hundreds of millions of dollars. It didn't make any money. I'm not going to make any more Star Trek films." Truth. And she says, "Are you crazy? My favorite show, you gotta make another one." So he says to the television department, "Hey guys, at 1/10 or less the cost of the movie, here's the money to make another film." And so the television department makes The Wrath of Khan. The Wrath of Khan is a big success, makes a lot of money, and that begat this incredible number of Star Trek iterations. And that's my story. Oh, I've been standing for 5 minutes. That's more than I can take. Thank you, everybody. Isn't that something? Incredible.